Greetings, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about samskaras. Now this is one of the most important concepts that is almost unknown in Western society, but it is a cornerstone for how to understand not just astrology, but to understand spiritual life and life in general. And the more you understand how samskaras work, and the more you contemplate about the meaning of the concept, but also looking into your own life and being able to see them in your own life, the more you're going to be able to come to answers about life's biggest questions. Like, why am I here? Why are we all here? What's the meaning of life? What's my individual purpose in life? Why do I have these certain habits? I'm good at these specific things in life. Why is that? How come I can't seem to get myself out of these specific scenarios that I just keep repeating? So these deeper questions that we have about existence in general you start to get answers to them when you understand samskaras. So its importance cannot be overstated. And so we're going to talk about in this video what they are, the definition of them, and in the follow-up videos we're going to discuss how they relate to astrology, and then what we can do about them, how we heal samskaras. And this is all going to be in the context for therapists, counselors, and clinical psychologists who are seeking to add astrology into their practice and to help their clients. And for samskaras, this is a foundational concept that you're really going to have to think about over and over and do your own research on how they work and study up on them, because you're not going to be able to use astrology to its fullest extent without a firm grasp on how samskaras work. So in the first video in this playlist, I said that traditional therapy and astrological therapy, they're both a science. There's differences, but they're both a science that uses data in order to find patterns and then come to conclusions about how reality works, the truth about something. They use different tools, which is a general difference between them. Obviously, they use different tools, but the biggest difference between them is that astrology is a spiritual science, and while traditional therapy, the elements of spirituality aren't as pronounced, and sometimes they aren't included whatsoever. So a spiritual science, what does that mean? Astrology is not a spiritual science because of the celestial phenomenon. People like to say it's spiritual energy, how the planets are operating and the positions and the houses and signs. That's spiritual energy. That's material energy. But that material energy is on a subtler level than, say, to study air or to study atoms. So when we're talking about the positions of planets or any celestial phenomenon, we're still talking about the material realm, the creation. But what makes astrology spiritual is that we're studying how the celestial phenomenon, which again is still material and physical, although we don't have the instruments to measure the actual quantities of those energies flowing around us. We're studying how those phenomenon, the celestial phenomenon, relate to our immaterial self, which is our soul. So at the end of the day, astrology is a method to help a person understand their physical life and their physical challenges, the material world, in relation to their spiritual life, their divine self. The part of you that was somewhere before you were born, it's here now within you, now that you're incarnated, and it goes somewhere after. So the journey that your soul is on in this particular incarnation has these attributes to it. So we're studying the soul, and that's what makes astrology spiritual. Samskaras are impressions on the soul, which influences a person to go seek out certain experiences. So you can think about it like a ball. Say a ball of clay that a ceramic artist uses. They mold the ball, and say you're able to mold it into a perfect circle. And that ball, when you're molding it, it's moist. It's also a little wet. So you can impress your fingers into it and it makes that indent. Think of samskaras as your soul is this perfectly round ball, and when you have any kind of perception, any kind of intention, any kind of action that you do, any kind of desire, what that does is it imprints it onto that ball and it leaves a mark. But remember that the ball is still whole. Everything is still there, but there's a mark in it now. That's what samskaras are. In one word, they're impressions onto our soul that make us desire certain things. So there's this other idea that's really important in Eastern spirituality, and that is karma. Karma is the actions onto the exterior world that you do. You're doing things, and that affects the energetic fabric around us. So what goes around comes around, because you're putting out an energy into the world. And it depends on how powerful that of the action that you do is. Even your thoughts have a karma, they have an energy, and they have an action. A samskara is the internal effect, the effect onto the soul, not like a karma, which has an effect on the exterior fabric of the world, the physical reality. That's an exterior motion. The samskara is how it affects your interior world, your soul. So let's take an example where, say you really want to go swimming and you want to go to a river and go take a nice cold dip in the river because it's really hot out. And you go through the day and you're sweating more and more, and you realize, I'm not going to be able to make it today. I have too many other things to do. And at the end of the day, you thought, man, I really wish I could have gone swimming today. You're leaving an impression. That intention to go swimming left an impression on you. And that desire is within you still, even though at the end of the day you go to bed. The next day you may be not even thinking about it, but that impression onto your internal self is still there. Say a week goes by and you all of a sudden have this opportunity and you're able to go swimming. And then you go swimming, it's just as you wanted, and it was just as refreshing as you wanted the previous week. Now that desire eases away. You don't have that desire anymore. The impression basically gets molded over, it gets healed over. You don't have that, they don't have that desire as much anymore. So the things that cause the strongest samskaras are these desires to have certain things, to do certain things in life. And when, say, you live your life and then at the end of your life you have this desire, this really strong desire, say it was to get married and you never got married, and you live your life and you die and you never got married, you left an impression for the wanting of a marriage onto your divine self. The next time around, in the next life, you're born again in order to live out, since there's this impurity, this samskara onto your soul, it's going to cause you to seek out that experience again, because the samskara doesn't go away. It stays with you even after you die. And samskaras, it can be almost anything. It can be something extremely positive and it can be something extremely negative, and anywhere within that spectrum. And another example would be, say a person comes into this life and they have this super strong desire to be famous. And things are going their way and they're getting more famous and more famous and more famous, and they become this superstar. Well, that person was born into this life because they have a samskara for fame. And if a person has a samskara for fame, then the next question is why do some people get fame and why do some people live their life never getting it? Well, that depends on the actions of the person. So that depends on the karmas. Say in past lives they had that, they were doing things that positively benefited the world, but they were never able to fulfill the exact, say they were wanting to be famous but they never got there, but they were positively affecting the world. They were doing good karmas. The next life, they still have that samskara for fame. They really want that. And because of the positive effect they had onto the world, that samskara is then aided by those positive karmas, and then the person can be projected into fame. And it can work with really anything, such as, say, for something, I don't want to get too controversial, but something, say, as abuse. Some people come into their life with this samskara for abuse based on past karmas, say as an abuser or someone who was abused, and they're living out this difficult life having to deal with abuse. And it comes down to that they have this unresolved desire, or they have this unresolved impression onto their soul with the general subject of abuse. And that is generally generally negative experience. Or say someone comes in with a samskara for abuse, but that samskara for abuse is for helping other people deal with abuse. But it comes down to entering yourself into that kind of experience, the experience of what is abuse, how to treat people with abuse, having been abused oneself, etc. So these samskaras are these unresolved impressions that we have onto our divine body, onto our divine soul, that are seeking to be expressed and lived out and experienced in life. And a way to think about another really good metaphor for how samskaras work, there's a Bible verse from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, I think it is, and chapter 13 verse 12, I think it is. And that verse is, for now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. And what that means, seeing through a glass darkly, and it's also an Ingmar Bergman film, which is really great, and it's about psychological disorders. I recommend that film, Through a Glass Darkly. But through a glass darkly, we see through a glass darkly. That could mean a window. We see through it darkly, so we see through a window, but that window is darkened, or it has these impurities, and we can't see to the other side clearly. But then face to face. So what it's saying is that the person who wrote this, St. Paul, is saying that after you die, that glass is taken away, that window is taken away, and then you see exactly what is going on. And you see clearly what you were trying to see through that window pane. So during our life, what you can think about it is that our samskaras are this window pane. And depending on how dirty that window pane is, or how chipped and cracked it is, how intense the samskaras are going to affect how we see the world around us. And those samskaras are influencing the way we see the world. Then when we die, we don't see through the samskaras again anymore, because we're not living in the material realm. We're not learning the lessons of those samskaras. But the more impure the soul is with the samskaras, the more it's going to need to return to live out new experiences in a new life. And the other way to think about it is that a glass, a glass is also a mirror. And so if the mirror in the same way is faulty, and it has smudges, and it's chipped, and it's scratched, we're looking at ourselves through the samskara, through the eyes of the faulty impressions that we have that are impure onto our soul. So we see ourselves with this impurity. And then, or think about it as the mirror is the samskaras, and it's smudgy, and there's a person behind me. I'm seeing that person with the lens of the smudges and the impurities. And then when I die, I turn around and I see that person face to face, and I see exactly how it was represented. So again, the metaphor is that the window or the mirror is the samskaras, the impurities through which we see the world that cause us to behave in certain ways. So my stepdaughter and I were reading Harry Potter right now, the first book, or she's reading it, and we're discussing the chapters. And of course there's the mirror of Erised is one of the concepts, which Erised just means desire backwards. And J.K. Rowling, the author, put this concept into the book, and I don't think she had the idea of samskaras in mind, but it's a very good metaphor for how samskaras work. So in Harry Potter, when you look into that mirror, you're seeing what you truly desire. So when Harry looks into it, he sees his parents. He desires to see his parents. And when his friend Ron looks through it, he sees himself as prosperous and the head boy, and he's the captain of the Quidditch team. So the mirror, this desire mirror, it's very similar to how a samskara works. You're looking into a mirror and you're seeing what you want based on what you have within you, your interior desires. And samskaras are formed because of the thing that forms samskaras the most are desires to live life in a certain way, or to live out certain experiences. And whether those experiences are going to be felt positively or negatively, it depends on the karmas that you do, what you put out into the world, whether they're positively affecting the world or negatively affecting the world. And so they play with karmas, and samskaras play together, but you have to understand they're different concepts. The the samskaras being the internal effect on your soul, and the karmas being the actions you put out into the world. And their interplay is going to result in certain experiences being felt as desirable or undesirable. The things that you desire feel good when you go and live them again, and or they feel bad because of your past actions being negatively affecting the world. So in the next video, I'm going to be talking about how we can so with this concept of samskaras, that our soul has these impressions in us, how does that relate to astrology? Because without the idea of samskaras, astrology just turns into the luck of the draw, and that each person is given, each person's birth chart determines everything that they live, and some people are lucky and some people are unlucky. People are born in various circumstances, and if we don't have the idea of samskaras, it just seems that wherever you're born, it's a random happening, and that you got lucky, you got that great chart. That person's just so unlucky they got that crappy chart. So that video will be the next video in this playlist, and then after we discuss samskaras and astrology, we're then going to discuss what we do about samskaras, how we can be like the ceramic artist that molds the ball and molds it back into a perfect ball. Because when the perfect clay ball has impressions in it, and you try to roll that ball, it's going to roll lopsided, it's going to have a faulty movement, and you're not going to be able to spin it on the potter's wheel perfectly, because it has impressions that cause it to be molded in a faulty way. So in the third video in the Samskara series of videos, we're going to discuss how we can work with samskaras and heal them.